Welcome to TED Talks Finance, episode 5. We're really starting to cook with you guys, so we're having a great time putting these episodes together. Our special guest this week is our Regional Managing Director for Mutual of Omaha Advisors, J. Paul Hurt. I've known J. Paul for the entirety of my time in the financial business, but his influence on me over time has been profound and impactful, and his wealth of knowledge in all things financial and personal is really special. So we're really excited to be able to have you today. And JP, before I just get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, work, life, family? Tell us about you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ted. It's nice to be here. It's good to see that the maturation is working for you and that you're growing quite nicely into a fantastic advisor. But I would tell you, I started in this business 35 years ago now, and I know I don't look it.
Yeah, wow, 35 years.
Yep,
Are you even 35 years old yet?
a little bit older than that, but yeah. So I made a career out of this a long time ago, and so. Love the business.
Yeah.
I stumbled into it, just so you kind of know. And I know you and I have talked about this, but I was a biology chemistry double major in college, and graduated with that double major and went on to work for the National Cancer Institute. And then I found myself significantly underpaid, living in a very expensive area of Maryland. And and after that, I'm like, man, I got to make more money. Went to my uncle, who was in the financial services business with American Family, and he said, don't do it, kid, you'll fail. It's a tough business. And he was a senior VP and had made a monster career of it. And so I did exactly what everyone would do, which is to go and join an insurance company and a financial services company, so I could prove him wrong. And I would tell you that 35 years later, I'm still doing it, and I became significantly more successful than he did in his career. So I feel blessed that I didn't listen to someone older and wiser at me at the time and got into this business.
I remember that next time you give me advice, I'll say, hey, I'm not going to listen to you because you're older and wiser than me, something like that.
Well, you can try it, but...
It's funny, you said that we've talked about this. I had no idea about any of that. I didn't know that you were biology and chemistry, you said?
Yeah.
That's super cool. I didn't know anything about working for the American Cancer Institute, so this is really cool new information that we're getting to uncover about J. Paul, and J. Paul and I know each other quite well. So, wow. So J. Paul, okay, you said 35 years plus of being in this career.
Correct.
You've seen a lot of change over that time frame. I know you haven't been in Arizona incredibly long relative to where you've spent a lot more time in the United States. Where have you been for the majority of your life, and kind of where, I know you moved around a lot, but tell me about your kind of tenure of states in the United States.
Yeah, I started my career, with a carrier in Maryland, and so I worked around the Beltway, actually focused on working with government employees, and that's kind of how I broke into the business. And so I became an expert in their benefits, had quite a large number of clients there. Then I got the itch to get into management and teaching other people, and so then that kind of took me out of Maryland and took me into the Midwest. Where I lived for 22 years in Kansas City, and built out practices there, hired new people into the business, helped them become financial advisors, of which I've got quite a good legacy in the Midwest, West. And then about 6 years ago, moved down here to Phoenix, and it was an opportunity for me to get here. And candidly, it was really with the desire to get my oldest son into the business, because he had interned with me in Kansas City in college and said that he wanted to do this. So I told him to go to corporate America and make sure that you hate it.
Yeah.
And if you do, then come see me. And then he came back 3 years later and says, I followed your guidance, and I'm going to join a financial firm. So I would love to join you and learn from you. But if it doesn't work, then I'll join someone else. And so then that pushed me. And I would tell you that, I went to my boss at the time, AJ, and had the conversation with him, and he was very open to the idea of me, and he actually gave me choices of places that I'd want to be, and we landed in Phoenix.
Wow. Yeah, sometimes it's just as important to find out what you don't like to land on what you eventually do like. I had an experience similar to that, right? In my senior year of college, I spent some time interning with an annuity wholesaling shop, and that kind of model of sales and working, pushing individual products and things like that helped teach me that I didn't want to be doing that. So JC, your son, obviously, who I have the privilege of getting to work with quite often, it's fun hearing about how he ended up coming into the business in just that same way. It's funny hearing you as well saying, 6 years ago you came to Phoenix. At the time when I came to know you, you were Jay Paul, and all of this background I didn't know yet. But how would you say that you and I initially came to know each other all those years ago?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, I mean, it's serendipity, right? So I mean, it just happened, and we reached out to you. We found your resume, and you were getting out of college and graduating from a great university, Grand Canyon, and we like the student body there, as it relates to the product that they put out, education, and so when I came across your information, I sent it over to my sales director at the time and said, hey, reach out to this kid. Looks like on paper, he's an entrepreneur. He does, a lot of things. He's a busy guy for a student. And I said, that's the type of person that we want. So, I mean, obviously you interviewed not just with us, but with many other opportunities that you had. And, we're blessed that we were able to, attract you over to this organization. And, you launched at one of the most difficult times in the history of this industry, because we went right into COVID, and you were brand new to us. And, and you and I know, I mean, we had guidelines that we were supposed to follow with social distancing. Yep. And you and I would have to meet outside at a coffee shop just to be able to teach you how to do this and that, and, and work through cases. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a crazy way to start in the business, but man, I mean, you've been able to impact your clients' lives and spread that knowledge better than most. And I think that will continue to carry on for generations for you and for your clients.
Thanks. I think a lot of the success that we've had candidly with our practice has been due to the people around us and the help and lessons that we've been able to learn from people who have been doing it for a long time. I want you to know, just personally, I don't think we would have the success, myself and my team, that we do if I didn't have your guidance through this process. And, I've been blessed that with the organization that we're able to partner with in Mutual of Omaha, as my practice is growing, the resources that we've had available to us to be able to better serve different people, it's been paramount. I mean, the amount of people still working as advisors, but also our leadership team, including you, it's really important that we have that. So Jay Paul, in all of your time in this practice and business, what would you say has been the most impactful thing for you over your 35-year career working with clients? On that retail side, even though you're in management now, you still see the minutia of what it is that we do. What about it that we do or your career has been the most impactful for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it probably in three quick perspectives. One is, the professional, right? So when I got into the business, I came in and, was repping, risk-based product.
Right.
But then I decided I wanted to continue to learn more. So I got my CFP within my fourth year in the business. And for me, that changed everything, right? So I felt like I'd arrived. I knew more than everybody else. So then I decided that, hey, I'm just going to do fee-based everything. And I started to drift away from the foundational parts of things. Right. And so I know we'll probably talk about that later, but for me, I had to find myself to come back into the risk side of it. And really for me, it was when I had kids. Yeah. And so that's when it's like, wow, I can make money, but I've got to make sure that if I'm not here to make it, because I had a near fatal car accident, in 1998 or 1995, excuse me, and we didn't know we were pregnant with JC. So for me, I mean, that was an eye opener. Did I have enough coverage? Would she have been able to make it without me? Yeah. Because our deal was, hey, I'll pay the bills, take care of everything. You help, you stay home, raise the children. So that was, our partnership of how we were embarking on it. But I would have potentially have left her in a lurch had I passed away. So for me, that was where I had to get my house in order, so to speak. And
so the impact of having holistic planning involved with what it is that we do as clients, what we do for clients, I should say, but also as advisors for them. I know recently you became a grandfather.
Yeah.
I know you always show emotion when talking about your sons, and for good reason. Austin and JC are incredible young men and your whole family, but watching JC and his wife Claire become parents and their sweet child Hallie, I mean, how has that, almost being another layer removed, but just as close, how has that shifted your perspective on family now, with the next generation coming up in your family?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it really is the next generation in generational planning, right?
Yep.
So, first and foremost, as soon as I found out they were pregnant, I'm like, hey, you got to up your insurance, you got to make sure you get everything's, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, because they're both, earners, right? So they
Yep.
both are in the workplace and have professional careers, and both enjoy what they do, so
Yep.
which is awesome. But at the same time, they're planning, they're building a lifestyle that's
Yep.
such that they, depend on both. So they've got to make sure. So I was all over and make sure they up their insurance appropriately.
Yep.
At the same time, me and Brenda, drafting our, trust revisions, things like that, to make sure we're accounting now for the next generation.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the greatest gift, is to be able to leave something behind besides the investment into them as people, right? To allow them to be the, the good, wholesome types of people, and people that you would want, everyone to be thankful for, right?
Absolutely.
But now you got a little person again. Man, I didn't realize how much that they can scream when they're that little.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is I get to hold her for a little while and
Yeah.
feed her, and then mom and dad have to take care of her. So,
Totally.
but yeah, it's really fantastic.
Yeah. That car accident, I'm sure, really just in the blink of an eye, you realize, you kind of see that your life flash before your eyes, and it makes everything feel a lot more real. In your time in the business, have you ever dealt with client tragedy and been alongside them through something like that? Maybe it's a family death, maybe it's, a tragic loss of income or a drastic change to someone's life. Did you ever have an experience like that with clients?
Yes, I mean, having been in the business this long, I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure.
certainly, I've had quite a few. I mean, probably one of the, my very first one.
Wow.
Some clients of mine, young family, and just outside of Hagerstown, Maryland. Got them set up on a family plan. Had some insurance on their son. And had an accident. He passed, and it was a small policy. It was $15,000, but they were able to bury him, and they were, paycheck to paycheck type of family.
Yeah.
Had a big mortgage,
Yep.
and were living beyond their means. But if not for that, and I mean,
Yeah.
he was 6. I mean, so it was, yeah. So I mean, I would tell you that, and in our business, sometimes people go, well, why would you insure a child? They have no, human life value.
Hear it all the time.
Yeah, and I would tell you that, there's a cost to be able to send, them, on to be with their Lord and their Savior. And I would tell you that it doesn't come cheap, and it only has gotten, obviously, and this was in the early 90s.
Yeah.
That, this happened with me. But from then on, I was always adding that into the, a family's portfolio, just to make sure that everyone was protected in case something happened.
Yeah, leave no stone unturned. I mean, we get that objection all the time with some of our plans when we talk about insuring children.
Mm-hmm.
People also don't factor in the cost of grief. And what I mean by that is, if you're a parent, my wife and I, Hannah, don't have kids yet, but we have nieces and nephews already at this point. And to say that, even just with them in our lives now, if something happened tragically to even a niece or nephew right now, the time that even we might need to take away from work to emotionally recover from something like that, let alone the parent at that time, it's much greater than people estimate.
Yeah.
So that's a great example, the loss of a child. Did you ever run into the situation where the loss of an income earner in a family was a part of their planning?
Yeah, actually, I mean, the 4th death claim I ever paid, a client, had come into the office. We had been working on a plan together. He decided not to buy as much insurance as what I wanted, what I suggested, based on his income. His wife didn't work. She was with him at that meeting. And, so he ended up putting in place about half of what I suggested. And at that time, and then again, this was probably about 1994, 1995.
Yeah.
And he put in $500,000 of coverage when I recommended $1 million. And so he ended up getting, on his way home, rolled his vehicle, passed away. and left 3 kids. She didn't work. And, a lot of people go, well, $500,000 will change your life. It's a lot of money. You watch a game show, whatever the case may be. But I would tell you, when you factor in, even if we use like a 5%, that's 25 grand a year. This guy was making 110 in 1995.
Nothing, yeah.
Nothing.
Doesn't
Now,
help
she got
him.
Social Security because she didn't work, right? But, she couldn't go to work because otherwise she'd lose her portion of it.
Yeah, her life was forever affected.
Yep, forever affected.
Yep.
And so, unfortunately, I mean, and she, she wished, she told me, she says, I wish he would have listened to you that day. Our lives would be looking different than what they are. And I stayed in touch with them until I left Maryland. And I would tell you that she was always thankful, but she always wished that I would have pushed him harder.
Yep. And the push of our business sometimes can be a sticking point for people, because certainly we don't want to come off pushy in our recommendations to people, but I'll say 4 months into the business for me, I believe I shared this story with you, but I'll preface this to say there's another advisor that I respect in our distribution named Al Warner, who said something once to me. And I respect Al for a number of reasons. But he said to me, once you understand the importance of what it is that we do, it takes away all of your reluctance to talk to people about it and to bring it up to their attention. I spoke to a man that came to me as an advisor when I was 4 months into the business. I barely knew what I was doing, but the gentleman had just lost his father, who worked with another advisor in our office at the time. He came to me and wanted to review some of the other things that he was going through, and he wanted to obtain life insurance and critical illness insurance for his niece, who was important to him. Just in the time frame that he and I were working together and putting together applications for his life insurance and critical illness applications, he got diagnosed with testicular cancer. And we could not sign and put his apps in for that individual because of that diagnosis at the time. The two things, he didn't know that was happening when he came to see us. He wanted to set up a plan similar to what his father had for him, because when his father passed, it set him up. That client died. And had I been able to get to him sooner, that might not have been the situation that happened. And so for me, that was really important and impactful for me to understand what it is that we do. Yep. Another client that you know of ours, 4 months after we did their whole financial plan, where at the time, insurance to them seemed like it was unnecessary. They didn't understand it, and they wanted more of their funds to go toward investing. Well, 4 months later, that client got diagnosed with leukemia. His wife and baby, thank God he's doing well now and in remission, but not only was he paid in the midst of that illness, but if that illness took his life, his wife and child would have been okay in that scenario. So coming to understand and know the importance of what it is that we do has been paramount, J. Paul. What would you say in your own words is one of the most, or what would you say in your own words is the biggest issue facing American households right now when it comes to their financial planning?
I would say it's twofold, actually. One is that, the breadwinners are not, probably don't have enough insurance, life insurance, and disability. Mm-hmm. And they need to protect the human life value. Yep. They need to protect the income stream that they earn and bring into the family. So that's one. And I would tell you that it's probably by half, at least, in the country. The average household is underinsured by half.
Oh, yeah.
And the other is they don't save enough.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very, very important that people learn how to, pay themselves first, save, and make sure that they have money for a rainy day. Yep. Even an emergency fund is out of reach for a lot of families. Yep. And that's something where you're having 6 months, of your bills set aside in an account. And they don't have it. So then you got to put it on your credit card, and then we all know what happens, and in this rate environment, I mean, interest rates are 28% on cards if you're not paying off the balance. So you can quickly get underwater. Yep. So that's something that I would tell people, that they just need to make sure that they plan appropriately.
Plan to live within your means. It sounds so simple for so many people, but just the thought of live within your means is just lost on so many people. The ability to have that stability and flexibility with resources, you don't get there without planning for it and making some sacrifice. Households' savings rate is way too low. Yeah. And you bringing that up is a great point, because I see oftentimes with clients how little they save, and oftentimes it's the people who make the most that save the least. I was just sharing with somebody recently that I would rather make half as somebody else does in terms of income, but save 40% of my income than somebody who makes double what I do and saves nothing. It's a tale of two people.
Yep.
I mean, I see that all the time as well. You know, J. Paul, you mentioned the risk side of planning as it pertains to holistic planning. You know, life insurance is an obvious one for people, but you and I have also been students of Erin Botsford, who was one of our guests on TED Talks Finance recently. And being students of hers now, learning about how her job as the risk manager for clients doesn't just include life insurance, but includes looking at other potential weaknesses within their plan. How do you help clients approach things from a holistic standpoint, looking at ways that they could potentially be affected negatively, not just with loss of life or income, but maybe with other liabilities, whether it's their business, whether it's their trust, other things that they might not see?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's really important. I mean, and you know, I don't sell property and casualty, but a prime example is, you know, the unfortunate circumstances that are going on in California right now.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And it's devastating. In, you know, time after time of newscasts, you see people that, you know, either have been canceled or let it go. And now, you know, they're going to have to rely potentially on federal government programs in order to try to rebuild. So I would tell you that every aspect of, you know, and I look at a financial plan, you know, like a house, right? And so quite often people come in, hey, you know, I want to invest in NVIDIA or buy some crypto, and that's what I want to do. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about, have you, you know, do you have good car insurance? Do you have you protected not just yourself, but, you know, not just everybody else, but yourself, making sure that if somebody, because there's a lot of uninsured, you know, motorists out there, especially in Arizona, or underinsured. So make sure that you've got the property, you know, and the proper amount of insurance there. Those types of things are part of it, because when you think about the financial house, you got to start with the foundation, not with the roof, or not with the, you know, the really cool, you know, game room or video room or whatever you might be building. So the foundation are the boring things that people don't want to talk about, and that's, you know, the risk side of things.
Yeah, and when you bring that up to them, when they come in with something that they're passionate and excited about, hey, I want to plan for this thing, and you bring forward potential other weaknesses in their plan that they don't see, sometimes the pushback on that can be frustrating for us as advisors, because they come to us for expertise, but they don't want to listen to it sometimes. And you're absolutely right that if you build the roof before the foundation, you don't have a house.
Correct. Absolutely.
I mean, absolutely, J. Paul. That's a good point. So our practice, you've been here the whole time. And when I say our practice, I mean myself and my team. You've seen the process that we've implemented and the things that we've done here in what was our Southwest office and has now become our West Division office. What would you say that our team does differently than maybe some other advisors that you work with and have worked with over time? Do you see anything that we do uniquely that has led to maybe some of our success?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you this. I mean, I've been blessed in my 35 years to have attracted good quality people into this business. That doesn't mean that I haven't had a few come into this business that probably didn't have their moral compass set the right way. And I would tell you that, you know, as it relates to your practice and what you do, you always put your client's interests first. And that is paramount. So, I mean, the fun term for people to use, or the buzzword fiduciary, that's the way that you approach your practice, and making sure that everything is on the table and is being looked at. That's what I coach to, as being a CFP. And, you know, so I believe and follow that mantra. And, you know, there can be multiple solutions that are going to be appropriate for a client, business owner, whatever the case may be. And so what we have to do is help them navigate that. And I think your team does a really good job of looking at all the different options that someone has, all the different, you know, holes that they might have in their portfolio or their circumstance, to make sure that they get from point A to point B. Because, you know, when we went to the moon, it wasn't, hey, it's a race to the moon to get to the moon. It was to get to the moon and back safely. And that's what you do for your clients, is you take them through that path and then get them to where they are safely.
It's encouraging, and it's fun to hear your perspective in that, knowing how many people you've worked with over time. I think, you know, one thing certainly that I believe makes us unique is our practice is exclusively based on referrals and personal introductions and relationships. A lot of financial planners or advisors work with many people that they don't have relationships with, or they don't know. Many people get into the business, they they work with leads or people that they know need their services, and they may not have any relationship outside of that. Some would say that it opens us to our team up to different liability working with so many people that we know so personally, but I think it just gives us more skin in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, we are accountable for everything that we do for these people because they're a part of our lives, not just here in what it is that we're doing from financial planning. So personal relationships, I believe, also lead to more robust client portfolios, relationships, plans.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember early on when I had started here, even with JC, as you've kind of moved into the management side of things over time, you still keep in touch with, I remember who you'd said was your oldest client.
Mm-hmm.
Your oldest client, now being able to work with JC to be able to do some things like that, that client probably means a lot more to you than somebody who called you on the phone that you've never met that maybe had 3 times as much money.
Yep.
Right? That
Yep.
personal nature makes a difference.
Yeah. And I've been in the business long enough to now, we just are wrapping up the financial plan for the 3rd generation of that family right now. So it's pretty cool to have been around and working with this gentleman for so long. So
yeah, generational wealth I think is so cool. Shout out to another advisor that we take a lot of inspiration from, but Marty Higgins over on the East Coast, his family wealth management practice and the way that they work with generations, all the way from great-grandparents to grandparents, parents, and grandkids. Being able to have the whole family like that and being able to establish their plans is just, it's so cool to me because all those people have a common denominator in the trust for their planner that wants the best for them. You don't get to that many levels of a family without demonstrating that trust and demonstrating that value. You mentioned again how long you've been in the business, JP, compared to myself. Obviously, I started in COVID.
mm-hmm.
For a lot of young kids, COVID is going to be their 9/11. But for me or JC or other folks, being newer into the business in the grand scheme of things, you have lived through and worked with people through a lot of big changes and disasters and times of strife, struggle, and uncertainty. For example, 9/11, the housing crash of 2008, the wars in the Middle East for the United States in the early 2000s. In times of economic uncertainty or tragedy around the world, what was your experience like working with people during that time? What did it teach you through that time?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good advisors, the commonality that they have is they stay in touch with their clients, right?
Yep.
So you prepare them for a significant knee-jerk reaction as it relates to socioeconomic conditions, whatever might happen in the world. We're embarking on an interesting time now, just because of the way the markets run up, the geopolitical issues associated with foreign countries that we're going to have to tackle and how we're going to deal with it, some of the aggression that's going on. I would tell you that people should make sure a couple things. One is that they're truly diversified. They have some safe money, that's given them some decent yield or return. But if the sun doesn't come up tomorrow, it's going to be there for them. Because what you want to do is be patient when these types of things happen.
Absolutely.
Because every time we have a bear market or a downturn, a 9/11, the .com, whatever it may be, it's an overreaction, and typically, and especially if you're in the U.S. markets, it doesn't mean you don't diversify into foreign markets. You do, because there's more, potential return there over time. But it becomes a smaller. You want safe, certain things when things go bad.
Yeah.
But when your portfolio gets hit, be patient.
Yeah.
Because a good advisor, and you and I have talked a lot about this, you're making sure when your clients are approaching retirement, their first 5 years of retirement, you're setting aside. You're making sure that bucket of money is safe. Then the next bucket is really safe as well, but a little bit more return. So you follow the right process, and that's what you and I have worked on, and that's what I work on with other advisors, making sure that we can technically bulletproof a strategy for someone to be able to navigate significant downturns in the market.
Absolutely. And I think setting expectations with clients can be really important, because when we see economic uncertainty or we see big changes within the market, I mean, even just in 2022, as the S&P 500 struggled to perform, setting the expectation with clients to understand that we are patient through economic downturns and things like that is really important, and helping them further understand how we've diversified their plans to withstand that and almost expect it. We build the ark. We don't try to predict the rain. Right. I say to people oftentimes, and as these things change, the idea is that we've set up their plans to be able to weather the storm and go through that with them.
Yep.
Stability in people's financial plans doesn't just include, we talked about risk, looking at, okay, if risk of loss of life, income, illness, injury, something like that plays a role. The other one is if your savings rate is low or your investments aren't performing, that can harm your financial plan. But what if you've opened yourself up to potentially having tax risk within your financial plan? How have you over time shifted some of your planning strategy to help diversify out the variable of taxes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this is one that could actually get me in a little bit of trouble with some of my peers out there in the industry is, I believe there's a great subset of people who manage money, right? And they manage money with a single focus, and that's for appreciation, to accumulate as much money as possible. When they do that, they quite often don't think about the distribution phase.
Yeah.
And so with our holistic planning approach, what we do is we want them to accumulate ridiculous amounts of money.
Yeah.
But what we try to do is look at different types of tax buckets that we have.
Yep.
And I think that's really appropriate for us to do, because what we got to do is think with the end in mind.
Yep.
And when we're staring at a 2033, Social Security, we won't have enough. Right now we got $1.6 trillion coming in to be able to pay those benefits. We're projected in 2033 not to have that, and by 2035 for the Social Security fund to be depleted. So then we're going to have to rely on new workers to do that. I would tell you that it's very, very important that people diversify their tax buckets as well as their asset classes that they diversify, because we will see taxes rise. We have to. And if that, and people need to understand that. And what'll happen is they'll retire, then their Social Security will get taxed heavier, and then their other income will, the tax brackets will get compressed and higher at the lower rates. We will see that in order to be able to fund our social programs that we have out there.
And when taxation is a variable, I like to remind people, when you were in high school algebra trying to solve for X, the whole point is to figure out what the variable it is to turn it into a known quantity. When you have a variable in your financial plan, it's something that's uncertain. With something as important as taxes and your own financial stability, you can't have variables. Our job as advisors and holistic planners is to work the variables out. And if you have a massive variable within your financial plan, something as large as taxes, not knowing is not a good strategy. You have to prepare yourself for that. The conventional wisdom of max out your 401k and you'll reach retirement and be okay. It's not so simple anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, what I find, J. Paul, is that there's that old saying of how the rich get richer. I find that a lot of people just don't know what options are available to them when it comes to tax-free growth. And to those people, I'd like to encourage them to say, come set up an appointment with us and let's talk to look at what options are available to you to help shelter some of your assets from potential tax risk in the future. There's all sorts of different strategies and ways that we can help diversify people in that way. David McKnight is a person that I know you and I look to oftentimes for wisdom on that. He talks about people taking their qualified tax-deferred assets from things like 401k plans, traditional IRAs, and tactfully and strategically transitioning them over time into maybe a Roth bucket or another strategy that allows their growth to be non-taxable. Social Security, provisional income, all of those things are going to play major factual parts of financial plans in the next 20, 30 years and beyond. So, I want to tell you that the way that you helped open my eyes to the threat of taxes is really important. I was just talking to a client in California who 100% of their financial plan, 100% of their assets in retirement that they are relying on for income is all tax deferred, meaning there is 100% variable possibility that their tax rate will fundamentally change how much income they have available for them for the rest of their life. That's terrifying for me if I'm in their seat.
Yep.
Doesn't mean there's not things that we can do to help them hedge against that now, But when we're sitting across the table from that 22, 23-year-old young couple, how do we help take them to the scene of the accident, as Aaron Botsford says, to explain to them what could happen in the future? How do you help change people's minds sometimes when they're hell-bent on one strategy over another?
Well, I mean, I think my job is to educate, right? So,
Yep.
when I'm working with clients, I want to point out, I want to listen to them. So
Yep.
it's really important that I hear them. So then I can regurgitate that back and make sure I understand their position. But then I get to ask them the why or the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we'll work through different scenarios to make sure, okay, if this happens, are you insulated from that?
Mm-hmm.
And quite often the answer is no. And I would tell you that most people don't go through that type of, all the from A to Z what if strategies and planning, and we do. And I think that's something that you asked the question earlier. What do you and your team do that's different than a lot of other financial people? And I would tell you is that you look at everything.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, you shifted your focus over time being in the business, coming back to the foundation of planning when you went so heavy on just the wealth accumulation side over time. I want to kind of take this next question from a personal and professional side. Mm-hmm. What advice, if you could look back at J. Paul circa 30 years ago, what advice would you give that man personally, and what advice would you give him professionally?
I'm a big look forward person and not look back.
Yeah.
I am the person I am today, and I have the great family that I have today because of the choices that were made. So I wouldn't change anything. Doesn't mean we didn't have lean times and troublesome times and
Right.
things. So I don't look at life that way. But what I would say is save more. You always are going to want to have more later. Mm-hmm. I mean, I should be at 57 in a situation where I could retire. I can, but it's not probably at the level that I would want to because I didn't save enough money. Now, I put both kids through college, so they came out with no debt. So that was a blessing. It was something that I was hell-bent on, and my wife was as well. So now we get to start with the granddaughter as planning to make sure that won't be something that, whether she chooses that or trade school or whatever, is mm-hmm. in the future for people. Save more.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I like your outlook on those things to hear that, some people dwell on the past and then it hinders their future because they're so focused on, I should have done this, or man, I wish I just did that. But I think you're kind of postured from this gratitude side of things a little more than the average person. Sometimes people really do fixate on those things. And when you look back on your life and you look at the blessings that you have right now, contentment and gratitude are really important. As we look forward, to the remaining years in your career, I'm blessed that I get to be a part of that with you. When you started, I've been married now, J. Paul, for 9 months. I love my wife, Hannah, so I'm really excited about all that we are building right now with our life. But my wife was, lucky enough to be able to come into a situation where we've created a stable practice and all these other things. But she has been able to add so much value to my life that I could have never imagined previously. You shared stories with me a long time ago about how Brenda used to help you when you were early in the business. And I just want to hear a little bit about that because I know that she would help you with setting appointments and doing other stuff. Just tell me about kind of what that was like. I'm sure that was a fond time in memory just early on.
Yeah, I mean, we both grew up poor. So for us, it was really, how do we break the cycle? And so this was obviously BK before kids. Yeah. But we knew we wanted to have certain things that our families had not, had. We wanted to have a house, not a trailer, those types of things were important to us. So, in 1992, we built our first house. So we were, 2 years out of college, and we're building a house. It was because we worked as a team on that. Mm-hmm. Now I can tell you, spouses working together, comes with a different set of, friction at times, so to speak. I couldn't do it. Yeah, well, and believe me, she, Brenda used to say, "You ain't my boss. I'm just helping with our goals." And I'm like, okay. So, but in the part of Maryland that we lived in, we lived kind of in the panhandle and, of there, Frederick, Maryland. But I'd go up into Pennsylvania and West Virginia to work. And so it was a big drive. So I'd go up and spend a day, sometimes 2 days. And so while I was out running those appointments, Brenda was doing applications that I had brought back on the previous trip, or she was making phone calls to set up next week's, but I would run literally 20 meetings. Or I would have 20 meetings set on the book every week, right?
Yeah.
So I'd go there, but then I'd get porched,
Yeah.
and, for those of you in the industry, you know what I'm talking about. But you go, knock on the door back in the day for your appointment, and, people would close their blinds and like, I see you, you're there, but you're not letting me in the house.
Yeah.
So then I just have to go to the next one, but I would set them up in 2-hour increments. And
Wow.
then sometimes, when someone porched me, I'd show up somewhere else. And I can't tell you the number of nice people in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Panhandle of Maryland that I'd get, went and broke bread with them when they are just meeting me for their first time as their insurance guy or their financial planner, and they would invite me in for dinner.
Wow.
And so, that saved me a lot of money too back in the day. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, just seeing the ways that being married for me has been able to be impactful with the value to my business has been awesome. So I look fondly on that story that you shared with me a long time ago for you and Brenda. Just a couple more questions for you while you're here with me, J. Paul. Is number one is Aaron Botsford maintains that you should be able to move up market with high net worth individuals without neglecting other people who have similar needs without the same net worth. What would you say is a common theme or most important financial consideration for a high net worth client?
What I see most people, dealing with are, the multi-generational, the wealth transfer.
Absolutely.
How do you do it? What's it look like? How do I still get to live the life, enjoy it, share that while I'm living, but also make sure that the tax person, the tax man, Uncle Sam doesn't get, half. Yep. And that's really what we try to do, is make sure that we're working on that type of thing. So,
right.
and I would tell you too, and this wasn't a question you asked, but the way that you've built your team and are building and expanding your team is ideal, because your bandwidth to handle probably 50 to 100 great clients. You have to have other people, because the clients when you started in the business are important, because that's how you got your start, right?
Totally.
It's like the first dollar, or the first slushy you sold at the 7-Eleven. You got a picture of it.
Yep.
And so those people are really important, and we don't want to neglect them.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do is have your junior partners and your team be able to take care of their needs, because their needs will grow, their families will grow, and you'll end up with more clients like that while you're focused on the high net worth, the move there. So
absolutely. And as we do move up market, my whole mantra and goal has been to never forget where we came from.
Right.
Continue to assist and serve those same people, and be able to employ a team that is equipped to help those people, while also allowing us to grow and ultimately affect more households. Like I said earlier, when we understand the importance of what it is that we do, it takes away the reluctance to talk to people. So with that being said, we will never stop growing, because stopping to grow means that there are households and families out there that have impact to be made that are not. And so as we continue to grow and build a team that can serve an incredibly diverse client base, I can't wait to see the journey that we take through that. And I'm employing the model of who, not how. And what I mean by that is finding the who and focusing on letting those people uniquely and individually help our clients, and entrusting them and hiring great people to serve our people that helped us get our start. Yep. So, J. Paul, you've been in the practice for 35 years. Hopefully, for me, you've got several more left, so that I can be able to glean more inspiration and wisdom from you. But I just want to say thank you for spending the time with me today. Thank you from the TED Talks Finance listeners and those out there that are going to be able to gain some valuable insight from what you've been able to share with us. And just thank you personally for the role that you've played in my development and in my family. So thank you so much for being our guest today, J. Paul. If you want to sign off with our team here, thank you so much for being a part of TED Talks Finance episode 5, and we will see you soon.
See you.